Why precisely the 16th BRICS summit in Russia is going to be so crucial? What are the nations part of it? And without the Western alliance, or so to say Western powers, what is this new alliance that's coming up? Is it also about a new geopolitical order?
As the world turns its attention to the upcoming BRICS summit in Russia, all eyes are on India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With key bilateral meetings on the agenda, significant focus will be on Modi's potential discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the heels of a breakthrough along the LAC. Both India and China stand to gain from enhanced ties, especially in trade and technology. As the BRICS summit approaches, experts are looking to Prime Minister Modi to play mediator in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict.
The war in Ukraine is frozen. There are very few parties who have the credibility to talk to both sides. I would argue there are really only two leaders worldwide, Erdogan of Turkey and Modi in India. So if Prime Minister Modi were to propose some kind of situation where he acts as an intermediary and conveys messages from the Russians to the Ukrainians and vice versa, I think he could play a very constructive role, and I think it would be useful to do it. It would raise India's profile.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has acknowledged India's role in advocating for peaceful negotiations. India's position as a non-aligned power allows it to maintain cordial relations with both Russia and Western nations, making it the ideal pick for mediating this conflict. With the expansion of BRICS, India aims to solidify its status as a pivotal player in global politics. The summit marks a critical juncture for India as it positions itself as a bridge between diverse global interests. Bureau Report, India Today.
As Gaurav Sawant continues to be with us, Gaurav, I have to ask you this. Of course, the confirmation is of Modi-Putin meeting, but what about the Xi Jinping-Modi meeting? Because with the recent discussions with China, specifically over line of actual control, is there a bilateral likely, and what can we expect from it?
It's very likely that the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have an interaction. They will be in the same room, and more than a pull aside, from what we've been told, that there is an effort from both sides to find common ground to move forward. The fact that the Chinese agreed to India's big ask that there has to be restoration of pre-2020, pre-May 2020 situation at all friction points, including Depsang and Demchok, which China calls a legacy issue that predates the 2020 standoff between India and China's agreed to it, shows that both sides are equally keen for one, normalization of relationship, forward movement, and which India had made very clear, whether it's Prime Minister Narendra Modi or the External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, they've articulated this on more occasions than one, that for forward movement in India-China relationship, there has to be peace and tranquility at the line of actual control. Only when borders are peaceful can this relationship move forward. And India stood our ground from 2020 till date. China initially thought that India will perhaps withstand one winter, two winters, but the third and the fourth winter, which is now approaching, remember, China is also finding it extremely tough to stay on those altitudes, to be there, because India's entire deployment wasn't just defensive. In some areas, and God forbid if the gloves are off, India's deployment was also very clearly indicative of the fact that India is not defensive, and India can do what it needs to do to protect our interests, and those QPQ or the quid pro quo operations on the Kailash Hills on the south side of Pangong Tso and dominating the Chinese Moldo garrison. It clearly indicated India means business. The deployment in the middle sector in Barahoti, the deployment in the eastern sector or in the eastern part of the country in Arunachal Pradesh, the Sela tunnel, the ramping up of infrastructure development all along the LAC, and the effort that's still on indicates that India wasn't going to buckle under Chinese pressure. And once China realized that, we are seeing some steps being taken towards normalization of relationship. But with China, India has learned one very difficult lesson. You don't go by what China says, you go by what China does on ground, and we will see how that disengagement translates into action on ground, whether it leads to de-escalation and ultimately de-induction of those 50,000 plus troops that have been massed on either side. Only when that happens will we see real normalization of relationship and perhaps India, China emerging as the two strong economies that very clearly the world was expected to see in the 21st century, being Asia's century.
And, you know, you're also correctly pointing out with China, it's often about what they do that must be believed, not what they say. And Gaurav, as I continue to track, and you're also updating us with the latest coming in, the line of actual control where these discussions have happened have led to possibly a disengagement. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that we have returned to a position of 2020 before the Galwan clash. What does it mean for India-China relationship here? Here's a report on that.
Four and a half years after India-China border tensions flared up in eastern Ladakh, after China's massive and provocative deployment along the line of actual control, leading to violent clashes and a warlike situation. There's been a big thaw in the world's biggest military standoff. The Ministry of External Affairs has declared that India has reached an agreement with China for disengagement and for restarting border patrols.
Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators have been in close contact with each other in a variety of forums. And as a result of these discussions, agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas, leading to disengagement and a resolution of the issues.
The surprise announcement comes 2 years after India and China managed to disengage and pull troops back from the 2020 friction points, the Galwan Valley, Hot Springs and the Pangong Lake. But the agreement now being referred to alludes to two legacy friction points that date back to the previous government, the mutual blockades in Depsang and Demchok.
There were two friction points that existed before the Galwan problem, and these were cases where patrolling was blocked. Can we assume that these two friction points, the problems there, because both sides were blocking the patrolling, those problems have been eliminated?
So let me say it again. An agreement has been reached on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas.
A resolution on this stubborn issue means the two countries have mutually decided to continue patrolling in the Depsang and Demchok areas, sectors where both sides have blocked patrolling routes of the other.
It will be good for both of us if we maintain peace and China does not carry on with this expansionist mindset and trying to create problem, as time and again they try to do it to surround India.
The effort is to ensure that they inform each other before going up to their respective claim lines. The claim lines remain, but a mechanism is being found to ensure there is no repeat of a Galwan type incident. And this indicates that India's strong stance has helped. All along, India said peace and prosperity at borders.
The breakthrough came ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia to attend the BRICS summit on Tuesday. There is, however, still suspense over the possibility of bilateral talks between Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
This is a multilateral event, though of course there is always a provision for bilateral meetings on the sidelines. We are currently looking into the overall program of the Prime Minister. There are a number of requests for bilateral meetings.
Prime Minister, several bilateral meetings are being considered, and it is work in progress.
With Shivani Sharma in Delhi and Gaurav Sawant in Kazan, Russia, Bureau Report, India Today.